Good evening once again, Vinita and Boman. Thank you very much for doing this. Really happy that you are with us, and I can tell you more than anyone else. I'm very excited to be with you. So for this session, Vinita, I just want to, since there's a lot of talk of food and everything, and you have spent so much time around food, in business of food, should I say. But as a person, as someone who has lived her life in different parts of the world, what are your memories with food as a part of growing up? Anything that you remember? I think.
Actually, lots of memories, Sanjeev. I grew up in Delhi. I went to school in Delhi and then came to Bombay as a student as well. And of course, anybody who's lived in Delhi, the street food of Delhi is, what we kind of grow up with. I remember I went to a convent school and we were told not to eat anything that was sold outside the gate of the school. But of course, we loved the chana bhaturas that those guys sold. So somehow we could figure out a way of going and, getting those, and aam papad, and there used to be this orange ice cream. And, so Delhi is actually very reminiscent of wonderful street food, from chana bhaturas to, in the winter you can have the hot bhajiyas and so on. And then, of course, Bombay is another big delight with its vada pav and its, bhel puri and the kulfi, etc. But, since you mentioned, I've been fortunate enough to live in, many cities, actually across 5 continents. And one of the things that is so engaging about food is, food is not just about having a great time or satiating your hunger. The whole ritual of food. And I remember, again, going back to Delhi in the Delhi winters, it used to be, you had to sit in the sun, you had to have the homemade butter and the hot stuffed parathas, etc. So, the entire ritual around food, where families get together, it is so much more than just eating. It is a very special moment of bonding and sharing, whether it is with your buddies or with your family. And it's true around the world. You go to Africa, you go to Mexico. It's a great way to actually share some wonderful moments and memories. And I have plenty of those.
Oh, fantastic. I can relate to that. I think all of us have great memories of food, and Mumbai. I know that Mumbai, as a child, I used to come, and we used to wait to go to Juhu Beach and eat all we could. Baman, everyone knows what you have done. What a great name that you have created to the films, through the films that you have done. And I think in some sense you were a late entrant to films, and we missed a lot of you when you were young or when you were a child. So what were you like when you were a kid? We want to know.
Childhood for me was actually not not a very happy situation, in the sense that I was born posthumously. I was born May. My dad died in the May of 59. I was born in the December 59. So 6 months later, and I was born with a family of women. My mother, 3 sisters who were older than me, of course, and my aunts and their friends, and all my cousins were all female. So I was born into a family where the I wouldn't call it domination. The female presence was so strong. I think I developed a good female side in me. The male presence, when it came along, which used to frighten me. I could not understand the baritone voice. It would scare me. I wasn't great at studies. I was more inclined to the performing arts, to singing, to music, to dramatics, and that I think has stayed with me for the rest of my life. And I used to be a very frightened child. So when there was something to eat, and I was listening to Vinita, and there was something to eat, and was put on the table, I was so afraid to even reach out and take a bite, and then to stare at it, like that for 45 minutes, and and my sisters would come, grab it, eat it up, and run away. It was funny, and I realized जो गब्बर सिंह ने बोला था जो डर गया समझो मर गया. So I had to I had to jump out of it at some point in life. On top of it, I had a speech defect. I used to speak like virus. मैं थोड़ा तोतला भी था, and I used to speak with a big lisp like that, just like virus in Three Idiots. I used that very thing as virus in the film later on. So I used to speak with it, and I said, and people used to laugh, and make, I used to open my mouth. I had inferiority complexes at that time. Because of that, I never spoke. I never spoke till I corrected. My mother helped me go to a speech therapist and correct that. Once that got corrected, as you can see now, the proof is that I don't shut up.
We don't want you to shut up.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, when I started doing theater when I was around 35, I went to Dubai for the first time and performed, and I realized at that point that you are not going to be just an actor for the rest of your life. You'll have to speak up and be part of something like this if your life has got to have any meaning. If you prove yourself as an actor for the rest of your life, people can't be going on saying, you did well in this film, you did it in that film. What did you do with that voice? And when I went to Dubai, and after the show got over, there was a dinner at a 5-star hotel, and unpunctured food and desserts and things that were on the table that even nobody had even put a spoon into. While we were eating, my wife and I, we were sitting on a little sofa and eating in the corner. The chefs came at night, not the chefs, I beg your pardon. The guys came and picked up the chafing dishes and just emptied them into these big garbage bins. And my wife was saying, why are they feeding people with that? It struck me then that something has to be done, because they can't use that food. There are a lot of laws over there, and you can't even fly it back to India. And but I think that at that point I realized that as an actor, if I ever have a voice, we have to use that voice and make sure that people like you, Sanjeev, people like Akshaya Patra, the work happening at Akshaya Patra, whenever they call me, I'll be there. That impacted me so much, I can't tell you. My hands shake when I think about it. So I am for that very reason.
But Boman, you said performing arts, you started early, but this was not your, should I say, chosen profession earlier. You dabbled with a few other things, right?
Very much so. I didn't do great academically, so I had to start making money at some point, because I knew I was not going to becoming a lawyer or a doctor, or far from it, or a mathematician. I mean, woe betide if I ever had to add one and one together. But I took up. I worked at a hotel at the Taj, and I went for a job as a waiter. And I said, I'll make some tips, I'll make some money, and that useless fellow in school who everybody thought, was so scared to face the world. The nickname was Bichara Boman. I was always called Bichara Boman. Uska kya hoga? Baap nahi hai, uska, So I started working at the Taj, and the manager there who gave me the job, who interviewed me for the job rather, asked me a very, very important question. He said, so which department do you want to join? I said, food and beverage. He's saying, idiot, the whole hotel business is about food and beverage. Which department do you want to join? So I said, the Rendezvous. Oh, you mean the French restaurant on the rooftop? I said, yeah. I think good. Very aspirational, I must say. Yeah. I think, idiot, start in the basement. Start with room service. Go to the kitchen below and work yourself up. And I think that's the biggest lesson I ever learned in my life. That, you could be an expert, but you first got to pay your dues. You could be very talented, but you got to pay your dues. And I think that little lesson taught me how you got to pay your dues if you ever want to aspire to reach the rooftop, in whatever you do.
So did you get to
then I was a shopkeeper for a bit, and then of course I was a shopkeeper for a bit, and then I became a photographer for about 14 years before I was old enough to be an actor, according to you, Sanjeev.
So I want to know, did you get to the Rendezvous finally?
I did. And what I used to do, Vinita, I used to learn a little bit of performance French, just enough to get me by. So I used to study French on the side. I used to go and I used to bring down the menu from there. And that menu never had prices on it. So the guests would never need to know how much they never had prices on it. Just the host would be given a menu with prices on it. I said, this is the fanciest that it can ever get. And I used to learn the menu, and I would do a little bit of research that when I got there, I would never be a fish out of water. You got to pay your dues, and I think that's wonderful. I did become a waiter, and I used to talk out the French with great elan. What did you, the rendezvous de feuilles de miel, la crème de basilico, et piste de zofran. That's a good choice. And and so always the performer, always the actor, always a sham. But I shammed my way through that. But I paid my dues to get to the rendezvous. I was a pretty good waiter actually.
Actually, Boman mentioned about throwing away food, and you mentioned about that there is plenty of food in the world. Is there enough food in the world? What do you have to say? Why are people still not getting food?
And some.
Actually, the world. Let's start with the world. There are 7.5 billion people. But the world grows enough food to feed 9.5 billion people. So everything else being equal, as we economists like to say, nobody should actually go hungry because we produce enough food for 9.5 billion people. But two very interesting things happen to food. And these are not my estimates. These are estimates done by several agencies, etc., including in India. So 35 to 40% of food is actually wasted or lost. And there's an interesting difference between the two. If you look at North America, Europe, the more affluent countries, there is very high incidence of food waste, which is, I go to the supermarket, I buy a big jar of mayonnaise or whatever, I put it in the fridge. Then, of course, we don't consume it. 6 months later, I look at the expiry date and I chuck it. Or I go and pile up so much food on my plate. I remember going to the US as a student, and Boman, like you, it used to shock me because people came to the cafeteria, piled up their plate, and my first thing was, are they going to eat it? And of course, several of them couldn't eat it, so it was chucked. So there is a very high incidence of food wastage in the more affluent countries. In countries like India, in parts of Africa, Latin America, all places where I've worked and lived, there is a very high incidence of food lost, which is that post-harvest, because of poor storage, poor logistics, etc., almost 35 to 40% of what actually the farmer has worked really hard to grow, and all of that has happened, that is just lost because of a poor supply chain from harvest. So post-harvest loss is very, very high in countries like India and Africa. And, if that one thing can be corrected, it would make such a big difference. As we speak, I mentioned 180 million people in India are chronically hungry. And this is before COVID, and this is before the migrants started going home. The nutrition and hunger is actually worse now. FAO estimates there are about 900 million, 850 million people in the world who are chronically hungry, which means they never get enough of the calories, not through macronutrients, and certainly not through vitamins and minerals, which are the micronutrients, which are so essential for nutrition. So which is why, the first goal of the SDGs is zero hunger. And that zero hunger the world is supposed to attain by 2025. And by all accounts, we are going to be nowhere close to it.
I want to ask, Boman, you mentioned that before you went into photography, you were at a shop. Did you say that? What shop?
Yes. I'll tell you. It was my mother. When my father died, we're a family of shopkeepers. My grandfather started the business. My father ran it's a little dukan. It's a little dukan in a dead end behind Novelty Cinema in the Grand Road district, the cinema district. And we had a bhatti, and we had a coal bhatti, coal sega, and a tawa, and a big kacha to remove potato chips, wafers. We call them wafers. Yeah. So we used to buy potatoes, peel, slice, wash, and fry them. And I used to do that myself. Wear a bandana, and I thought it looked pretty cool in those days. And I thought, that's where I met my wife. Actually, she was the only one who thought it was cool. The others found it sweaty. Uh, and I used to fry wafers, do all that, thing, and we used to sell garma garam wafers. And it was something that I had settled down, and I think because I was a shopkeeper for so long, I needed the escape through creativity in some form. So I used to write a lot at that point of time. I used to read a lot of scripts at that point of time. I used to do a lot of acting, reading and workshopping. I used to make notes. I used to observe my customers. I used to do character studies of my customers and things like that. It was great. It's just that my body and my clothes always stunk of ghee. And I couldn't get it up. No matter how many showers I took, that smell never left for many, many years. And I was proud of that. I was proud of that.
Vinita, I want to come back to you with a question that with this pandemic going on, and there are many people who are watching us, and some of them run their own businesses, small to big, and some people work in different companies. And because of downturn in economy being shut, and there is a lot of economic loss, personal and business both, has happened. What would your advice be to them? What would you say that as a business leader who has managed, who has also been an employee, that in times like this, that this is what I would do for next 3 to 6 months to 1 year? What would you say?
Advice is a big word, but my perspective on this really is that business is an ecosystem of society. I can't be in a successful business if my community, my society, the world around me is falling apart. So I think businesses cannot be myopic at this point in time. This is a time to really come together and work, whether as an individual, as an NGO, or as a business. And, I would like to tell you that I know several, business houses in parts of India who actually, I don't think anybody realized that there were almost, and the number varies, 140 million to 200 migrants, that nobody had thought of, that were going home, that were, without food, without water, and so on. I think it is, in many ways, we have to recognize the contribution of individuals and of our civil society. So I do think that this is the time. I think individuals have risen up to this occasion. And my sincere appeal to everybody who can do anything about it is whatever you do, even if it is 10 chapatis, it'll be 10 chapatis more than they had. And actually sleeping with hunger is virtually impossible. I mean, at the end of the day, there's so much about attitude. Even when we heard the story of Akshaya Patra, this whole thing, you start with 1,500 kids, and then, if you believe that you can do much better, and you just get down and, the lage raho munna bhai phenomena. It's so much about attitude and temperament at the end of the day.
I completely agree with you. Look at those kids, man. Those kids are they're winning hearts out there. It's so beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
The other thing I would say is I've never been to a school. The poorest of the poor schools in the poorest of the poor localities, I have never seen a child in a school who is not smiling. I think there is so much. They have nothing. I mean, they are barefoot, they're running around with their little, things, etc. But they are all smiling. And then when you ask them, what do you want to be? In fact, I was in a school once, and, there was this whole thing, and somebody said, oh, madam makes those Britannia biscuits and so on. So, I spoke to the students and then I said, "Ki, kuch prashna hai aapka mere liye?" So the first, I still can see the face of this girl. She gets up and she says, "हमें आपके जैसे बनने के लिए क्या करना पड़ेगा?" Like that.
Amazing. Yeah,
You know,
it's
I'll tell you, you know, again, the joy. I was in America a year and a half ago for an educational fundraiser for education. I think just as you talk about ecosystem, education is part of it, including Akshaya Patra, feeding people. People come to school. It's so beautifully cyclical in that sense. And two kids came with me, went from here to America for that fundraiser, and we had a wonderful evening and all of that. And I just said, you know, imagine two kids in New York. I mean, that memory, they should never forget that memory. So I called up a friend of mine and said, you know, I bought tickets for Lion King, and I cry every time I go to Lion King. I'm a bit stupid like that. And I asked them to arrange a backstage tour for these two kids. And then we went to the show, and I wanted to tell all the people who are, you know, so kindly putting their hands in their pockets and pressing that button. The joy, you know, you can't for all the money in the world, that joy. We sat in the Lion King. I'm sitting in the middle with these two kids, one on the left and one on the right, a girl and a boy, 11, 12 years old. And they, when the curtain came out and that song, you know, when the first elephant came out, they were looking like that. And just before the show started, I said, I don't want to sit in the center. Saying, no, Bhaiya, aap beech mein hi baitho. Sit in the middle. Why he was making? I said, no. After the interval, I'll sit on that side, and then in one point I'll sit on this side. Because if I sit in the middle, I'll only be seeing one face at a time. I want to see both faces at a time. And you know, I cannot tell you the joy of watching that play, which brings in great emotion in any case, and seeing these kids and their gaping faces of enlightenment. I can't, all the money in the world cannot give that moment. I think that when you say that, you know, you can't sleep even as an experiment, these people who are going to sleep hungry are not experimenting. They don't have a choice, you know.
It's
and
their life.
It's their life. And if there can be so much hunger, there can also be so much non-hunger. It can spread in equal measure. It can spread in equal measure. It can just go through the word of mouth of just the joy of giving. Because if there is hunger, there can be an equal and more powerful human love of non-hunger, of giving non-hunger to the world. Sorry, I get a little emotional. थोड़ा मैं कलाकार हो गया मैं थोड़ा.
No, बिल्कुल. But that's what Akshaya Patra is. It's full of emotion. It's full of stories. It's full of joy, and it's food for education. We have a big surprise. We know that Boman is multifaceted, and he's not going to make wafers for us now. Neither is going to film, nor is going to say any dialogue. But I'm going to request him with folded hands to sing for us.
Well, you surprised me, first of all. I'm surprised. What are you talking about? I'm no singer. Have you heard that I'm a singer? No, who told you that? But anything, if it's going to raise money, even if I sound silly across the waves, I'm going to do it because I've been requested to do something. My mother always taught me never say no to anybody, never fuss. God has given you talent, or even if it is half a talent, if you can hit a few notes, and people request you to do something, I'll do it. Sanjeev sent me this guitar, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sing a song from my movie 3 Idiots. It was a very sad song in the movie, but I think I've converted this song over the years. I sing it and make it inspirational more than anything else for the children out there. And I hope that, you know, we all sing together. Please don't look at the negativity in the song. I've always sung this song with children, actually. And turned this song, which was a little bit of a dirge, into a more positive, upbeat thing. So if you don't mind singing with me, wherever you are, in whichever corner of the world you are, sing along with me. It's very simple to sing. And Vinita, don't turn off your mic. I don't want it to go away.
I'm all ears.
But you sing too, and Sanjeev, you too. सारी उम्र हम मर मर के जी लिए, एक पल तो अब हमें जीने दो, जीने दो। सारी उम्र हम मर मर के जी लिए, एक पल तो अब हमें जीने दो, जीने दो। Sing it. Na 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 na. Oh, give me some sunshine, give me some rain, give me another chance. I wanna grow up once again. Give me some sunshine, give me some rain, give me another chance. I wanna grow up once again. बचपन तो गया, जवानी भी गई, एक पल तो अब हमें जीने दो, जीने दो। बचपन तो गया, जवानी भी गई, एक पल तो अब हमें जीने दो, जीने दो। Everybody, na 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 na. Give me some sunshine, give me some rain, give me another chance. I wanna grow up once again.
Yes.
Amazing.
Wonderful,
Amazing.
wonderful.
What can I say? What can I say? Fantastic. Thank you, Vinita. Thank you, Boman, for your support. Fantastic. And I can see Vandana smiling.
Boman, there's a question from the audience. What will you not do?
Oh no.
Yes.
I can boil an egg apart from this, but apart from that, no scrambled egg also. That's all.
That was an amazing, amazing performance. Thank you. And our audience is ecstatic. We have people on the Facebook and here on our webinar. And believe me, this surprise was a very nice surprise. Beautifully, brilliantly done. Thank you so much. And I think what goes a long way is both all of you gave your time.
I just want to thank Akshaya Patra for the opportunity of allowing us to make our own very small contribution.
And I'm really touched by all this. Thank you, Vandana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sanjeev.
Thank you. This is what leadership is. This is what people like me get to learn from. So thank you for teaching. Great teaching from not just learned people, but this humility. Thank you, Boman. Thank you, Vinita. And Vandana, all your contributions, what you do, big salute. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so
All
much.
the best.
All the best. And we hope to see you again sometime soon.
Absolutely.